The abandoned hospital. On a rainy winter night, a group of friends decided to explore a place that had been a source of terror and legends for decades. The abandoned St. Mary's Hospital. The hospital, which was shut down in 1985 after a series of mysterious events, was rumored to be haunted by the spirits of patients and medical staff who had met their end there. But tonight, the friends were determined to uncover the truth behind these legends, even if it cost them their lives. Ahmed, Layla, Khalid, and Sarah stood outside the hospital's rusty gate. The air was cold, and the wind howled through the bare trees. Ahmed looked at the imposing building and said, "I don't like this place. I feel like we're being watched." Layla, holding a camera, smiled confidently. "Don't be a coward. This is our chance to create amazing content for YouTube." Khalid added, "Let's get started before the darkness gets even scarier." After a moment of hesitation, they stepped into the hospital, leaving behind the safety of the world they knew. The hallways were dark, and the air was thick with the scent of mold and rust. Their footsteps echoed, as if someone was following them. Suddenly, Sarah stopped and said, "Do you hear that?" They all fell silent, and in the distance they heard faint sighs. Ahmed tried to calm himself. "Maybe it's just the wind." But Layla looked at him seriously and added, "Or maybe it's something else." As they moved forward, they arrived at a dark operating room. Medical tools were scattered everywhere, covered in a thick layer of dust. Khaled picked up a rusty instrument and said, "Look at these tools. They seem like they were used for unethical experiments." Sarah felt nauseous and stepped away, but before they could say anything else, a terrifying sound echoed. The door slammed shut, and the lights went out completely. Layla screamed, "What was that?" Who closed the door? At that moment, they heard a faint scream coming from the basement. After a moment of hesitation, they decided to go downstairs. The camera trembled in their hands, and the darkness was suffocating. Ahmed said, "This isn't safe. Maybe we should go back." But Layla insisted, "No, we're here to find the truth." When they reached the basement, they found a room filled with old dolls and strange drawings on the walls. Sarah looked at the drawings and said, "Look at these, they look like dark rituals." Suddenly, Layla heard footsteps behind her. When she turned around, she saw shadows moving quickly in the darkness. The shadows started closing in, and the friends ran in different directions. Khaled shouted, "Where's Ahmed?" But Ahmed was nowhere to be found. They heard his scream in the distance, and when they reached the source of the sound, they found his camera lying on the floor, but Ahmed was gone. Layla screamed, "Ahmed, where are you?" But silence was the only response. The remaining friends decided to escape, but they discovered that the doors were locked. Sarah panicked. "What is this?" The doors were open before. At that moment, they heard sinister laughter echoing through the hallways. Khaled said, "We need to find another way out." They ran through side corridors, but the shadows followed them everywhere. When they reached a large room, they found Ahmed standing in the corner, but he wasn't responding to them. Layla approached him and said, "Ahmed, what happened to you?" When she touched him, he turned suddenly, his eyes completely black. In a strange voice, he said, "You're next." At that moment, the camera glitched, showing distorted footage with screams in the background. Days later, the group's camera was found, but they were never seen again. After Ahmed's disappearance in the abandoned hospital, the friends returned to Layla's house, trying to process what had happened. But the nightmare was far from over. The next day, Sarah found a strange old doll in her bag. The doll, resembling a child with tattered clothes and empty glassy eyes, hadn't been there when they entered the hospital. But from that moment on, something began to follow them. At midnight, Sarah woke up to a faint scratching sound coming from her closet. When she opened it, she found the doll lying on the floor, but now its eyes were open. She tried to convince herself that she hadn't left it that way, but she decided to hide the doll in a box under her bed. However, The next morning, she found it sitting on her chair, facing the bed. Khaled, the most skeptical among them, decided to examine the doll. He noticed a small engraving on its back, written in an old script, "The hospital knows the truth." As he turned it over, he heard a child's laughter echo from the hallway. When he stepped out, he saw the shadow of a little girl disappearing behind the door. Layla, who had been recording, gasped, "Did you see that?" But the footage showed nothing, only a strange blur. The next night, Khaled decided to destroy the doll. He took it to the garden and set it on fire, but suddenly, the flames extinguished on their own. The doll remained intact and looked even brighter. When he returned home, he found a message written in red on his mirror. "You're next." That night, everyone heard small footsteps moving through the hallways. By dawn, Khaled had vanished. The only thing left behind was the doll, sitting on his bed. Terrified, Layla and Sarah decided to return to the abandoned hospital. In the basement, where Ahmed had disappeared, they found a hidden room behind a broken wall. Inside, they discovered old documents about unethical medical experiments on children, along with photos of dolls identical to the one Sarah had found. One of the pictures showed a doctor in a white coat with completely black eyes, just like Ahmed's before he vanished. On their way back, they noticed that the doll had returned to Sarah's bag. They tried to dispose of it in a nearby river, but when they got home, they found it sitting on the dining table with a new message, "Coming back soon." That night, as Sarah struggled to sleep, she saw the long shadow of the doctor standing outside her window and the doll smiling in the dark. The next morning, Layla discovered that Sarah had disappeared. The only clue left behind was footage from the home security camera, showing Sarah following the sound of a child's laughter outside, while the doll waved at her from a distance. Did Sarah really disappear? Who is the doctor with the black eyes? And what is the secret of the indestructible doll? Stay tuned for the next episode to find out more.
After Sarah's disappearance, Layla found herself alone in an almost deserted house. The mysterious doll still haunted her, and the doctor with pitch-black eyes appeared in her nightmares every night. In her despair, she decided to search for Khaled, the only survivor left, who had vanished after attempting to destroy the doll. Her only clue was an old map she'd found in the basement room of the hospital, a map leading to a forest shrouded in a terrifying legend. On her way to the forest, Layla met Yasser, an eccentric young man who claimed to have survived an encounter with the doctor years earlier. He warned her, "The forest isn't just trees. There's something living there, something tall and faceless that hunts anyone who tries to uncover the hospital's secrets." But Layla, determined to save her friends, ignored his warnings and pressed on. The forest was dense, its tangled branches blotting out the moonlight. Layla carried a flashlight and a small camera to document everything. Suddenly, she heard rustling behind her. When she turned, she saw a long shadow moving between the trees, taller than any human. "Khaled," she called out, her voice trembling. But the shadow vanished, leaving behind a strange symbol carved into a tree trunk, the same symbol she'd seen in the doctor's room at the hospital. As she ventured deeper, she noticed a crumbling shack amidst the trees. Inside, she found a room filled with torn dolls and drawings depicting sinister rituals. On the wall was an old photo of the doctor with a group of children, one of whom looked exactly like the doll. Suddenly, footsteps echoed outside. Layla hid behind the door and watched as the tall, faceless figure entered the shack, carrying a corpse. Khaled's corpse. Layla nearly screamed in horror, but covered her mouth. The figure began cutting Khaled's body with a rusty knife, eerie whispers escaping where its mouth should be. Suddenly, Layla's phone vibrated, a loud ringtone revealing her location. The creature snapped toward her with unnatural speed and chased her through the forest. Layla ran blindly as the shadow closed in, until she stumbled into a dark pit. At the bottom, she found a tunnel leading to an underground cellar. Inside, she discovered a room filled with rusted cages and human bones. On the wall, a message was scrawled in blood. Experiment number 12. Failed again, but I will revive her soon. Layla realized the doctor had been experimenting on humans to resurrect something, or someone. Before she could escape, she heard a familiar laugh, the doll's laugh. When she turned, the doll sat on a shelf with a note, "You're next." Suddenly, her flashlight died, and two black eyes glowed in the darkness. The doctor's eyes. Layla screamed, and the feed cut out. Layla's camera was found a week later in the forest, but her body was never recovered. The final recording shows a tall shadow carrying something doll-like into the forest's depths. Disappearance. Darkness swallowed all hope of finding survivors. But elsewhere, an unexpected new figure emerged. Nora, Layla's cousin, who moved to a city apartment after hearing of her cousin's fate. Little did she know, this move would begin her own nightmare, as she discovered the mysterious neighbor across the hall was no mere legend. Nora, to herself, "I just need peace. Away from all these horror stories about Layla." While unpacking boxes, she noticed the window of the apartment across the alley was dark, yet she felt eyes watching her through the curtains. When she asked neighbors, they said, "That apartment's been empty for 10 years. The site of a gruesome murder." Nora, sitting in her room at night, hearing a faint knock. "Who's there?" No answer. When she opened the door, a small doll lay on the floor, identical to the one that vanished with Layla. On its back, written in blood, "Welcome home." Suddenly, the lights went out, and a tall shadow of a man in a lab coat appeared outside her window, though the window was nailed shut from the inside. Nora, visiting the landlord. Landlord, fearfully, "Don't meddle. The neighbor you see isn't alive. He's the ghost of the doctor who killed his family here before taking his own life." But Nora refused to believe it. Returning, she broke into the apartment across the hall. Inside, she found walls covered in photos of missing children, medical documents, and Layla's name on a list of victims. Nora, midnight, hearing footsteps outside her door. Peering through the peephole, she saw the doctor, his eyes black, skin corpse-pale. He whispered hoarsely, "You're next." Nora fled to her room and locked the door, but the doll awaited her on the bed, its eyes now open and oozing black blood. Nora, sobbing, "What do you want from me?" The doll pointed to the mirror, where the doctor's reflection loomed behind her. Nora escaped the apartment, only to find herself in the abandoned St. Mary's Hospital. The halls felt familiar, same rusted doors, same rotting stench. She heard Layla's friends calling, "Join us." In the end, she reached an old operating room, where the doctor awaited with a twisted grin. "Doctor, mechanically, experiment number 13 will succeed this time. Your body is perfect to revive my daughter." The camera shows Nora strapped to an operating table as the doctor raises a rusty scalpel. Suddenly, Layla entered the room, her eyes black, clutching the doll. She'd become one of his successful experiments. "Layla," dual voices, "don't resist. It will be beautiful." The feed cut to a message. Continue the story in the next episode. The final ritual. Epilogue. Will the doctor's 13th experiment succeed? What fate awaits Nora and Layla? Can anyone escape the shadows of the past? Many horrors await in the next episode. Don't forget to subscribe.
The final ritual. After Nora fell into the hands of the mad doctor, the clock of horror finally began to tick. The doctor, who revealed his real name, Dr. Elias, was about to complete the sinister ritual he had started decades ago. a ritual that used the bodies of victims to bring back the soul of his daughter Myrna from the other world. But in the darkness, there might still be one last hope. Nora wakes up tied to a rusty operating table, surrounded by headless dolls and circular symbols drawn in blood on the walls. Dr. Elias whispers beside her. "You are perfection. Your young body will be the perfect vessel for Myrna's soul." On the screen behind him, footage from old cameras shows Ahmed, Khaled, Layla and Sarah locked in cages, their eyes black like those of zombies. Dr. Elias shows Nora an old journal that explains his story. Flashback. 40 years ago, his daughter Myrna suffered from a rare disease. In desperation, he turned to dark rituals from a stolen book belonging to a local tribe. But the rituals spiraled out of control, and Myrna died, transforming her soul into an evil entity that needed new bodies to return. Dr. Elias, 12 experiments failed, but you are experiment number 13, the perfect number. Nora notices an old doll placed on a nearby shelf. Suddenly, the doll's eyes glow red, and the room begins to shake. The trapped souls in the dolls whisper to her, "Break the circle! Destroy the symbols!" Nora uses her feet to roll a metal container onto the blood-drawn symbol, causing Dr. Elias to scream in agony. The ritual is interrupted, and the cages open. Ahmed and Khaled attack Dr. Elias while Layla and Sarah try to free Nora. But the controlled friends are not as they were. Their black eyes gleam with ferocity. Layla with two voices. "You can't escape. We are family now." Nora runs through the dark hallways as the sounds of battle echo behind her. Suddenly, the doll appears in her hand, pointing to a hidden path. The doll leads Nora to a secret room beneath the hospital, filled with classified files. Inside, she finds photos of past victims with failed marked on their foreheads, an old recording of Dr. Elias. "If someone finds this place, know that Myrna never dies. She is in every doll, in every shadow." A mummified corpse of a little girl wearing a white dress, Myrna. Nora hears approaching footsteps. She turns to see Dr. Elias wounded but laughing hysterically. "The ritual is complete. Myrna is here." The doll starts moving on its own, and Myrna's corpse opens its eyes, staring directly at the camera. The screen goes black, followed by the laughter of a little girl, ending in a blood-curdling scream. The Final Ritual, Part 2. Suddenly, the lights exploded in the secret room beneath the hospital. Nora stood face to face with Myrna's mummified corpse as its eyes slowly opened, radiating an eerie blend of childhood innocence and ancient malevolence. The old doll in Nora's hand trembled violently, as if warning her of the danger. Behind her, she heard Dr. Elias's insane laughter. "You are lucky. You will witness the birth of a new goddess." But Nora wasn't alone. The trapped souls in the dolls and past victims began whispering in her mind, drawing a mental map of the room. A circular symbol on the floor, the key to the ritual. With urgency, she kicked a metal container onto the symbol, shattering the bloody circle. Dr. Elias screamed as if a knife had been plunged into his heart, while the walls trembled as if the hospital itself was crying out in agony. The doll in Nora's hand suddenly ignited with blue flames, unleashing the screams of hundreds of victims used in past experiments. One by one, the spirits broke free, shattering the cages that once imprisoned them. Ahmed, Khaled and Sarah reappeared as semi-transparent ghosts, surrounding Dr. Elias and dragging him into the darkness. "This is the fate of those who defy death," Layla shouted, her voice merging with another, eerie tone. But Myrna was not so easily defeated. Her moving corpse advanced toward Nora, her long claw-like fingers brushing against her face. "I'm not the villain. I just want my father," Myrna whispered in a broken, childlike voice. The burning doll in Nora's hand fell to the ground, shattering into glass fragments that pierced Myrna's body. She let out a deafening scream that ripped through Nora's ears. Myrna's body crumbled into ashes, but her black shadow remained, staring at Nora with a mix of sorrow and rage. The hospital began to collapse. The ceiling crumbled, and the hallways turned into a maze of fire and smoke. Nora raced through the corridors she had seen in Layla's nightmares, guided by the voices of the victims. "Get out! Run!" At the main entrance, she found Yasser, the mysterious young man she had met in the forest, waiting for her with an old car. "Hurry! We won't get another chance," he yelled, pulling her inside. But just before the doors shut, Nora saw Dr. Elias's tall shadow standing on the hospital rooftop, holding the shattered doll, laughing. "The game isn't over yet," he whispered as the flames swallowed him. The hospital completely collapsed, leaving behind a cloud of dust and distant screams. Days later, Nora returned to the ruins with the police, but they found no bodies. Not Dr. Elias, not her friends, not even Myrna's ashes. All that remained was the doll, perfectly intact, lying in the center of the rubble. Its eyes were wide open, just like before. When Nora touched it, she heard one final whisper, "You're next." That night, as Nora tried to sleep, she looked in the mirror. Myrna's reflection was there, waving at her with a smile. Behind her, the shadows of her lost friends pointed directly at her. When she turned around, no one was there. But the doll was now sitting by the window, holding a small note in its tiny hand. Next episode. The battle is over, but the shadows remain. Will Nora break the curse forever, or will Myrna continue to haunt the living, searching for a new body? The choice is yours. And now, dear viewer, should we continue the story or stop here?